Welcome to our Immigration Briefing show, where we dive into the latest happenings around the globe with a sprinkle of charm and a dash of insight. Let's get into today's roundup, shall we? Starting off with a bit of a bummer from the UK, the Windrush scandal compensation scheme is getting some serious side-eye, being labeled as a failure by campaigners. They're pushing for an independent body to take over the compensation payments to victims, but the Home Office is playing hardball, insisting changes would only slow things down. With over 7,862 claims made and £80.1 million paid out, the debate heats up as many claims remain unresolved. Meanwhile, down under, love conquers all, and bureaucracy, apparently. Stephanie Short and Valentine Hadjiev's love story, separated by the Iron Curtain for 22 years, saw a fairy tale ending with a little help from Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Their decades-long romance reminds us that love knows no bounds, not even geopolitical ones. Switching gears to the literary world, American author Amor Towles is making waves with his novels that whisk readers away to bygone eras. With over 6 million copies sold worldwide, Towles' stories offer a nostalgic escape into historical intrigue and the allure of wealth, a stark contrast to today's literary scene often focused on the present's complexities. His work is a testament to the enduring appeal of historical fiction and the universal yearning for stories that transport us to another time. And there you have it, folks. From the pressing issues of immigration policies and compensation schemes to the heartwarming tales of love and literature that transcends time, our world is a tapestry of stories waiting to be told. Please stay tuned for more detailed content on these stories. Windrush scandal, compensation scheme branded a failure. The Independent. Campaigners are calling for an independent body to handle compensation payments to victims of the Windrush scandal. The Home Office has so far resisted demands for reform, arguing that changing the system would disrupt claims being processed and lead to delayed payments. According to the latest figures, 7,862 claims have been made, with £80.1 million, $110 million, paid out for 2,233 claims. Over half of the 4,847 claims that have been closed had no entitlement to compensation. A total of 185 claims had been in the system for at least 12 months. Lovers separated by Iron Curtain for 22 years, married by Anthony Albanese. The Sydney Morning Herald. Stephanie Short and Valentine Hadjiev, both students at Sydney University, fell in love in 1975. However, Hadjiev had to return to Bulgaria due to political reasons, causing their relationship to be put on hold. They both married and divorced, but never lost touch. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, Hadjiev tracked down Short through email and they reunited in 1998. They eventually got married and were together for 25 years before Hadjiev passed away at the age of 71. Their love story was highlighted by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who had played a part in helping them secure a permanent spouse visa. The world still loves yesterday's America. Foreign policy. American author Amor Towles has gained widespread popularity with his novels, which combine the plot-driven coziness of genre fiction with the polished prose and psychological sophistication of literary fiction. His novels, such as Rules of Civility and A Gentleman in Moscow, have sold over 6 million copies worldwide and have been translated into 30 languages. Towles' novels resonate with readers because they offer a glimpse into historical intrigue and the promise of wealth, which are often lacking in contemporary literary fiction. Towles' novels are often compared to 19th-century literature, and he frequently references literary models from the past. However, his more recent book, Table for Two, Fictions, marks a departure from his usual historical settings and allows for a more irreverent and metafictional approach. The stories in this collection take place in a more contemporary setting, and they exhibit a cautious irony and social critique that reflects the way people act today. While Towles' novels are deeply engrossing and have strong moral and ideological compasses, they are also historical, which suggests that American literary fiction is currently more interested in the past than the present. This may be due to a lack of confidence in the current American moment or a desire for escapist storytelling. However, it is important for both readers and writers to engage with the stories of the present and to explore new narratives and possibilities. Miserable, Hong Kong restaurants lament drop in business over Easter holiday. South China Morning Post. Restaurants in Hong Kong have experienced a significant drop in business during the Easter holiday compared to last year, as residents head across the border to spend and landlords increase rent. One restaurant owner said that the atmosphere had been downbeat, prompting him to close on the third day of the four-day Easter holiday. Some Hong Kongers are staying in the city to save money amid the economic downturn, despite others choosing to travel to mainland China during the long weekend. All About the Money, Nepali, Filipino students flock to Australia for work. South China Morning Post. The demographics of international students in Australia have shifted significantly over the past 3 decades, with students from Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong no longer dominating the student population. Instead, mainland Chinese, Indian, and Nepali students now top the rankings, followed by those from the Philippines, Vietnam, and Colombia. The number of students from Nepal, Colombia, and the Philippines has surged more than 300% in the past decade, while there are nearly 200% more Indian students than there were 10 years ago. However, the number of students from mainland China is still significantly higher than any other country. The international education industry in Australia is now worth 36 billion Australian dollars, $23.6 billion, and has become increasingly difficult for the government to oversee, as cases of manipulation and fraud have become more prevalent. Many international students pursue graduate degrees, but there are also those who pay for cheaper English language courses or vocational training courses, which have attracted exploitative practices. In Key Bridge collapse, Baltimore lost a piece of its cultural identity. Yahoo! Generations of Maryland workers, longshoremen, seafarers, steelworkers and crabbers whose livelihoods depend on Baltimore's port, watched in disbelief this week as an iconic symbol of their maritime culture crumbled into the Patapsco River. Baltimore was a port long before it was incorporated as a city, and long before the United States declared its independence from Britain. The disaster early Tuesday marks the latest blow to a city whose storied history often gets lost in conversations about its more recent struggles, poverty, violent crime and population loss. The Key Bridge opened in 1977, spanning 1.6 miles, 2.6 kilometers, at the entrance of Baltimore's harbor and allowing residents to traverse the waterway without driving through the city. It provided a direct connection between two working-class, water-oriented communities that formed during World War II, when nearby steel mills produced hundreds of massive warships to aid in the defense effort. Baltimore Bridge highlights role of migrants in U.S. workforce. Japan Times. Advocates for immigrants in the U.S. have highlighted the crucial role that immigrants play in keeping the country running, following the death of 6 Latino workers who were fixing potholes when a Baltimore bridge collapsed. Activists argue that immigrants take on jobs that Americans do not want to do, contradicting the rhetoric of populists such as Donald Trump, who portray immigrants as criminals and invaders. Letters. It is time Britain recognized that Russia poses a real threat to peace in Europe. Telegraph. In a letter to the Telegraph, a reader argues that the UK government needs to inform the nation of the potential risks posed by Russia. The reader suggests that events unfolding in Ukraine may ultimately threaten the existence of a democratic Europe. The letter argues that the government needs to focus on national security and increase its defense budget to address the pressing need to expand and update the armed forces. The reader concludes that the threat posed by an aggressive Russia is real and growing, and the magnitude and nature of the risks need to be communicated to the public. Another reader suggests that falling birth rates should not be seen as a problem, arguing that young adults in many countries cannot afford their own homes or secure well-paid jobs. The reader argues that instead, the focus should be on keeping people healthy into old age and improving the situation for young people, so that the birth rate will naturally increase. In another letter, a reader urges the London Bullion Market Association, LBMA, to align with international standards such as the EU's conflict minerals regulation to ensure that gold traded within the UK is not contributing to ecological disaster and harm to indigenous populations in countries such as Zimbabwe and Brazil. Tory MPs call for migrant crime league tables based on nationality. The Independent. The UK government is considering ranking migrant nationalities with the highest crime rates in an effort to strengthen visa and deportation policies. The proposal, put forward by former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, would see the nationality, visa, and asylum status of every offender convicted in English and Welsh courts published in annual crime league tables. While some Tory MPs support the amendment, there are concerns about its practicality. Home Office figures show that around 12% of the total prison population in England and Wales consists of foreign nationals. The Refugee Council has argued that asylum rules in the UK are already stringent. Churches should not allow asylum seekers to exploit system, says Cleverly. Telegraph. UK Home Secretary James Cleverly has warned churches not to allow asylum seekers to exploit the system by converting to Christianity in order to secure asylum. His comments came after a judge granted asylum to Abdul Ezedi, a convicted sex offender and the suspect in the Clapham acid attack, on the grounds that he had converted to Christianity. Cleverly said that the church had agreed that Christian conversion was no guarantee of asylum being granted. The Archbishop of Canterbury has previously denied allegations that the Church of England is permitting spurious conversions in order to support asylum claims. Reopening the Port of Baltimore could take weeks as colossal wreckage cleanup gets underway, officials say. Yahoo! The Port of Baltimore may take weeks to reopen following this week's bridge collapse, according to officials. Crews are in the process of clearing debris from where a £213 million cargo vessel hit the Francis Scott Key Bridge, killing 6 construction workers, with 4 bodies still missing. The Chesapeake 1000, the largest crane on the East Coast, which arrived on December 11, is being used to help clear the wreckage. The bodies of 2 of the victims have already been recovered. Crews are expected to lift a portion of the bridge on December 12. Over 1,000 engineers are currently studying the wreckage to determine the best way to remove it. The cargo ship, which is the length of 3 football fields, is carrying around 4,000 tons of steel from the bridge's frame. The bridge collapse has halted the flow of ships in and out of the port, which is the largest in the U.S. for cars and light trucks. It handled a record 850,000 vehicles last year. Forget passports, Brexit has robbed us of so much more. The Independent. The author of this article reflects on their decision to leave behind their British passport and embrace the opportunities of the future rather than holding on to the past. They mention their Irish friends who have children benefiting from the Erasmus program, and express hope that their own children and grandchildren will have the same opportunities. The author suggests that those who voted for Brexit only have themselves to blame for denying future generations these opportunities. TikTok ban is Congress's latest moral panic. Bloomberg. The proposed ban on TikTok in the U.S. is an example of a moral panic, where fear overwhelms moderation, and laws are passed without sufficient evidence, according to Stephen L. Carter in Bloomberg Opinion. Carter argues that throughout history, moral panics have often involved foreigners, such as the restrictions on foreign ownership of U.S. airlines introduced in the 1920s. The author suggests that moral panics can result in arbitrary laws that are difficult to remove, and that the loudest voices in these panics are often fighting yesterday's war. How African immigrants have revived a remote corner of Quebec. New York Times. The city of Rouyn-Noranda, in northern Quebec, has seen a significant increase in the number of African immigrants in recent years. The city, which previously only had a handful of African immigrants who all knew one another, now has newcomers from Africa in various areas of the city. The city's first African grocery store, Épicerie Interculturelle, has become a popular meeting place for African women from different parts of West and Central Africa. The increase in African immigrants has brought about changes to the city's demographics and has been met with both positive and negative reactions from the locals. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.